All right. Welcome everyone to the 2020 APAC Groundbreakers virtual tour by APACO UC. This year, our event will be the biggest one ever done with 174 sessions, including normal sessions, workshops, and hands-on labs from 123 different speakers over 11 days. Also, it will cover sessions on 4 different languages. Please remember to register to as many sessions you can, and all sessions will be available to replay as many times you want for 2 weeks after the initial session time, date and time. You can also interact with the speaker at any time during that 2 weeks by posting questions or comments directly in the playback session page. I would like to say thanks to our Oracle user groups and Java user groups that made this event possible, and also to our sponsors, Oracle Groundbreakers and CloudDB. Now for today's session, Oracle Digital Assistant Overview by Frank Nimphius. Please feel free to write questions at any time during the session by using the Q&A tab of the Zoom webinar, and the speaker will be answering them at the end of the session. If any issues or technical issues or problems with the event during the presentation, also please feel free to contact me directly as a moderator by using the chat tab of the Zoom webinar. Basically, you can make questions to Frank Nimphius any moment during the session, and he decide when he wanted to answer. They will be done through using the Q&A tab. The chat tab is only for technical issues or problems. Then we'll be talking directly to me, to the moderator. Frank, anytime you want to know if there's any questions, if you don't have access to the Q&A because you are in full screen, just let me know and I can check that for you.
Sure.
And now, without any more delays, I would like to leave you with this amazing session by Frank Nimphius. Frank, I will give you now the control. That's it.
Okay.
And you can start your session.
Great. All right. So welcome everyone from my side. As said, my name is Frank Nimphius. I'm working for the Oracle Digital Assistant Product Management, and I'm based in Germany. So for me, it's early morning. For you, it's late afternoon or evening. So this session is all about Oracle Digital Assistant, and it's a workshop session. That means that, first of all, I have a bit more minutes to share with you. And second, we will be a bit more hands-on. So I will go to the system and show you how to develop Oracle Digital Assistant beside of just telling you what it is. So the structure for this session is that we first want to look into what Oracle Digital Assistant is. It's not really a marketing talk, but just like setting the scene, also architecture-wise, what you can imagine out of Oracle Digital Assistant. And then we go into individual parts, and there are 4 core parts: the skills, Digital Assistant by itself. Yes, Oracle Digital Assistant has digital assistants in it, so we'll talk about that. It's a configuration setting. And then we talk about messaging channels, and then also a little bit about, if you're an Oracle SaaS customer, how you would get access to those skills. So Oracle Digital Assistant, well, chatbots are not new, though many people haven't tried them, but the idea of chatbots is quite old, and even Oracle started very early. And I remember that soon after I joined the mobile cloud service team in 2015, almost a year later, we started to have Oracle Intelligent Bot Cloud Service, IBCS, as the first installment of Oracle chatbots. And to this time, they really solved simple problems. So they were single task based, like a bot was selling tickets, but that was it. It wasn't really kind of anything more than just an automation of a specific task. But it was good for the time being. It showed how you could use machine learning and artificial intelligence, which has improved since then, to automate or just make people more accessible to self-service operations, pre-qualify user requests for customer service use cases. You could have the bot answering the commonly asked questions, and this is what they were used for with many customers. Now, today, the world has a bit changed, especially for Oracle, and we're thinking of digital assistants. And this is like, as if you would have a human assistant that would help you out. and that you pay for that reason, we will give you a digital assistant that's supposed to become a good friend of yours, and that should assist you in just more than a single task. You can imagine, as we are all these days working from home, there are a couple of questions that you might have, not about the situation, but also about like your expense reports or questions about your vacation requests. Now, this all should be filled in conversationally, and normally you would either go next door to wherever your human resource representative is sitting, or you would just ring them up. But you can imagine that with everyone working from home these days, the phone line probably never stands still for those human resource employees. So here a digital assistant would be a perfect example where you would have a human resource digital assistant that you can ask any question. And if there is a question that the bot cannot answer, then the bot will connect you through to a human resource agent, and the agent would be sitting on Oracle Service Cloud, where they would just go into chat mode with you and answer your individual questions, and then take that information and train the digital assistant so the next time that you ask that question, digital assistant would know about it. So Oracle Digital Assistant is a huge step towards what really the expectation is that users have for a digital assistant, and this paired with voice, and that would get us to where Star Trek, I think, would had shown us the way. So I mentioned that there are 4 core areas that we're looking at. There are skills, digital assistant, channels, and store. Now, the skills are individual chatbots. Now, this is where we left Intelligent Bot Cloud Services, I mentioned it. So we use individual skills and use them as a module that we assemble in Digital Assistant. And then Digital Assistant is just like flight control, doing the routing based on the user message to which skill to invoke. Now, channels is just the medium that you use to access Digital Assistant. I wouldn't say that we're fully embracing the mantra of write once, run everywhere, but we support a majority or the major messengers. And for all of these, you don't necessarily have to recode or redevelop. You can optimize your bot for that, but out of the box, it will run on all of the native supported channels. And then there is a webhook channel that I will talk about later a little bit more, which would allow you to connect to anything else that we don't have a direct support for. And that would include even channels like WhatsApp. And then we have a skill store, and that is where Fusion Apps would come in, because this is how you would get access to all of their offerings. So these are the 4 core building blocks, and that's more or less the agenda for this talk. So architecture-wise, if we look how the core bits come together and where they are located in our overall architecture. So first of all, Oracle Digital Assistant is a cloud service that sits on the Oracle Cloud infrastructure. Within the Oracle Digital Assistant architecture, on the left-hand side, you can see we have channels. Now, channels include the web, which means that we can embed the messenger on the web. Mobile, which means that on your mobile application that you build for Android and iOS, we would have an SDK to integrate a bot there, and then third-party messengers, and we also have voice support. The channel is an adapter, so it will make sure that the proprietary payload that comes like from Facebook will be converted into some payload that the digital assistant understands, and the same way back. And this is how we manage to have one single source line to support different channels. The intelligent routing is using machine learning, and this is the entry point where every message goes through. And I will show you later on how that looks. The skills itself understand what the user wants. For this is what the user intends. And then we have a box here that says Q&A, which should be better relabeled to frequently asked questions, as we have 2 options. One is an Q&A module, which is more or less going out of the door because we have something better, and that's called answer intent. So I will show you that then. And then on the backend side, whatever you want to connect to, if you want to connect to Oracle Fusion Apps, or if you want to connect to your database through Oracle Relational Data Services or ORDS, then you can do that from the bot. And to be honest, a bot that cannot really access a backend service would be pretty useless. So we do that, and we do this through a functionality called custom components. I'll talk about this in a second as well. Well, how successful are we? Well, we're on the market with Oracle Digital Assistant for quite some time now, and this is a report that comes from from Ovum, basically one of the people who evaluate different solutions and look into the strengths and the weaknesses. And we got pretty good feedback from Ovum in December 2019 for what Oracle Digital Assistant is. And so I'll keep it like this and move on to the technical parts. But you see, we're kind of mature in the market, so it's not that we are starting out. And we also have some versions that we created digital assistants for. So before showing skills, let me show you Oracle Digital Assistant so that you get an idea of what you could do with it. So let's start this demo, which actually runs on the web. So don't be irritated that this is using the Oracle look and feel. What really matters is this little icon on the right bottom, because this is where the messenger goes in. And I have the option to, when the user starts a page or when the user clicks on the icon, I can configure that to send a hidden message to the bot so that the user gets this welcome message. And in my case, it's a starting point for ordering pasta. So as a unexperienced user, I would just follow the dialog flow, which you would think I could build that as a web application as well. And in fact, you can, but I will show you some of the linguistic benefits later on. So I choose 2 toppings for my pasta, and then it asks me how many do I want to have. So I say 2 servings, and now it comes and say, okay, understood. And you see that conversational wise, it already steps me through the order process. And if that was the first time I ordered at the Groundbreaker pasta, then I follow the dialog flow because that's the easiest. However, I can do more. I can do it more conversational, and that's the big strength of Digital Assistant, that users are not bound to exactly matching a specific label or pressing a button. So I could just type one more, and one more is not an option. It's add more pasta or cancel my order or complete my order. So I do just one more. So this actually now gets me to the pasta menu again, because it understood that I want to order something more. So what if I say, I like macaroni, cheese with garlic and oil, and make it large. So you see the point here that I run through this already. Same with if you have a human resource bot or an expense system bot. If you experience it once, you know exactly what you can put in to cut corners. So it understands macaroni cheese. So I want to have 2. So let me order one more. And this time, let me order a large bacon pasta. Well, let's choose a different one because I want you to be able to identify it later. So that's too long. So I like fettuccine Alfredo. And you can easily tell, like, for instance, if I would click this icon, I could speak it even, it will translate it for me. But I want to make sure that I type it correctly. So I like fettuccine Alfredo, and make it, oh, let's do with garlic. I don't know why I choose garlic all the time, and cheese. All right, so now it understands the information I provided, and it recognized that actually I didn't provide a size. So I can now just only provide what's missing. What I also could do, I could also, when I ask for a fettuccine Alfredo, and I would say make it large. And then when it asks me for what should be on the topping side of things, I could say, well, garlic and oil. And by the way, I changed my mind, make it medium. And it would understand this. And this is the beauty of chatbots, that chatbots, if they're programmed well, if they're well functioning, that they can go with a little bit of wiggle room, I would say. So users are not really constrained by a specific dialog flow. They can skip states. and so on. So let's now go to complete my order, in which case I'm getting here a summary of the order. So it shows me what I first wanted, like a bacon pasta, then I went to macaroni cheese, and then to fettuccine alfredo. Now, you know what, I'm not really that hungry, so let's remove that item. So then again, the bot would come back to the state where I left it, and would now have 2 items for me to order. Now, I'm really hungry, but I have no idea if I have enough money in my account. So what I can do, and this is now the benefit of a digital assistant, I can break out to a different module and say, now what's my account balance? Now, if this happened to be a bot that has access to my banking account, it can now give me information about my finance situation. So it would say like, yeah, there is enough money for ordering the pizza or the pasta. And you see, it just gets me back to my menu section. So exactly where I left it, which is exactly what I want. So next thing is I want to do, okay, check account balance. Oh, I did that already. So, but you know, we could have a look at the savings. What I really wanted to do is I wanted to complete my order. Now, to complete my order, actually, I need to log in. You know, there need to be some sort of trust between me and the pasta shop. So yeah, log me in. And this really now goes to a fake logging that I created, but it navigates to another skill. And you don't see that as a user. This is just one experience. So digital assistant really orchestrating different things. So let's put my username in, it's Frank. And now instead of a password, it asks me about resolving a quiz. So 3 multiplied by 1, let's just say it's 5. And then the bot says, "Ooh, how can I allow you in if you could not even solve the simple challenge?" Now I try harder, I say 4, and this now says perfect, password accepted, and you can resume the pasta order. So now it resumes it and says, okay, what is the name that we should deliver that to? So that would be Frank Nimphius, of course. And then the address. So let's put my address in. In Germany. Okay, and then it says, okay, I deliver the pizza to you, or the pasta, not the pizza. So you see that the digital assistant just gives me a unified experience when I have a conversation with the remote system. It can go a long way. And if it would get lost somewhere, it could even offer me to reach out to a human agent. So this is the first sample I wanted to show. So now let's have a look at the digital assistant itself. And here you see that I have 3 skills in my digital assistant. So that's my settings. And we will get back to the digital assistant when I talk about it. So for now, I want to switch to the view of the skills. And you see there are many skills here, as this is a shared environment. It's not just my environment, but each of the boxes that you see is a skill, is a chatbot by itself. And each of these tiles in here can be associated with a digital assistant. So we will look a little bit closer into this later on, but let me for now move on just to give you a little more insight to what skills are. I mentioned already skills are individual chatbots, and they are exposed through digital assistant, but they can also run standalone. So if you have a skill like the pasta order skill, and you say, you know what, I don't need the login bits, I don't need the check balance, I just want to expose this to my audience, then you can do that. You can also then say, well, once you expose the skill as standalone, you created a second skill and then a third skill and a fourth skill. And then iteratively, you would release those skills. But now you move to digital assistant. And then digital assistant will be like the concierge bot that will route the request accordingly to the different skills. Skills use natural language processing. There are 2 types of intents. We have regular intents, which are intents that end into some sort of conversation that the user is having with the bot. And we have answer intents. Now, answer intents are like fire and forget things. So you can imagine that if you have an expense reporting chatbot, that a user might say, okay, how do I file an expense report? because it's the first time they're using it. They don't know. Now, this would be an address for an frequently asked question. Another would be like, what are the expense policies for Germany? Yeah, so that's something that in the context of filing an expense record, you might want to ask. The information that a user provides, like, was it a meal, or was it a parking fee, or was it a hotel bill? Now, this is what we call an entity, because these are bits of information that we can step users through in the course of a dialog flow, or the user can provide it. So the user could start, I want to file a new expense item for hotel, yeah, or for taxi. And then we will be able to extract that information, and as in a user conversation, not prompting for it. Because if you meet a human during a party or during a work break, and if you have a conversation and someone said, well, I attended a great soccer game, was Liverpool against Manchester, then you wouldn't ask, okay, great, who played? Because you took that information, Liverpool and Manchester, out of what the user said. And that's exactly what entities will do. The core is the dialog flow. The dialog flow is where we combine components into a logical flow that in the end will make sure that if the user doesn't provide any of the information in the user message, we ask for it. So we prompt for it. So if someone said, I attended a great soccer game, not saying anything else, then you would say, okay, who played? And then we say Liverpool and Manchester. And then you get that information. This is what the bot can do as well. And this is what dialog flows are for. And I put the Lego blocks in here because skills really are reusable conversation modules, because once you build a skill, you can use it in many different digital assistants. So it's not really bound to a specific digital assistant unless you want it to be bound. So let's talk a little bit about the features that a skill has and a bot for that reason. And I typically say that artificial intelligence and machine learning is not enough to build a full bot, because there are so many features required by customers. It's not all handled by machine learning. However, machine learning is a very core part of the overall chatbot, because this is what makes it accepting natural language, understanding natural language, finding information in it. So what we provide is an intent builder. And this intent builder allows you to define intents and example phrases. Example phrases is what you train the bot with. And this is how the bot in the end will understand. Entities is what I said, extract the information. And this information that we can extract from a user message through entities help us to skip or bypass steps in our conversation and allow people, as I showed you in my pasta order demo, to skip specific steps. So let me go through to the bit in Oracle Digital Assistant. So this is the sample that I showed you, pasta Alfredo with login, and you see I have two intents. One is an answer intent, and this, if someone would ask, does an order come with extras? We serve pasta, you can order pasta. So that would be just the information it will provide. So it wouldn't go any deeper. But then I have another one, which is called regular order pasta. So reg is just like a naming convention I'm following. So I can see what is an answer intent, what is a regular intent. So this is when I said, I want to order a pasta that got me into this dialog flow. So what we want to do here, and to make it a little bit more exciting as well, is let's build something from scratch. So let me quickly open another window and just go to the tile view. So this is the overview of skills I have. And then I create a new skill. And let's call this interview. Just call it weekday interview. So that will be a very simple bot that we're creating here. So we have a display name. So that is in the end displayed in the tiles. So I can have a blank in here, but this one needs to be as it is. We can provide a version because skills are versioned, and the versioning in the back is with random numbers. So these are just the visible bits. So I can say, okay, this is developed with 20 with a version 20. So we have October. And this is the first change I do on that, in this development process. And this is an answers into or queries weekday interviews view questions. Okay. All right, so that gets me now into a fresh, empty skill, except for that in the dialog flow, I have some content here, and we'll go to that later on. So for now, we want to focus on intent and entities, what I talked about. One is start interview. The conversation name is just in case that there is a disambiguation dialog. So start the interview. Then this probably will be displayed to users. Okay, so next what I need to do is I need to provide examples. So example would be how would I as a user request for this intent? And this is something that when you build a bot, you will have to learn as well. You have to get your conversational mindset ready, and we'll have to say, okay, how would a user ask for a specific topic? So here is like, I want to provide feedback, or it would say, I want to start my interview. I could also import those sentences. So if I have them in a comma separated list, I can do that. I don't have it here. So we continue just creating like 5 or 6 or something. So let me do my interview. Ask me about my favorite weekday. Get my interview started. Let's do the interview. So you just go random here. So it's not that you have to provide a specific semantical correctness. The grammar should be okay, but that's all that you need to do. You try to be very flexible and just try to use a lot of combinations. Yeah. So I started most of them with I want to. Yeah. I could turn it around and could say, do you like to start my interview? Yeah. So it just depends. And the expectation is that the way that we put the questions in, and they're just like, the basis material on how the machine learns. In the end, you will add more and more and more as you go. And we'll show you when we talk about Bots Insight, which is an analytic engine, how it tells you what the user put in and what the machine didn't understand, and then you would retrain it. But for now, this is enough what I have here. So I want to have another one. And this time I want to create an answer intent. And I could just say, what is it? Just like, what is it about? Or like just calling about. Often the simple names are the best names. And what is this about? And what I typically do is, as I see that I'm just violating my own naming conventions here, I like to have kind of a naming convention, which I consider best practices as well, which is that I say, okay, this here is an answer intent. So let's do answer and about. Because as you can see, there is a filter option here. And if you quickly want to see which of my intents are regular intents, which are answer intents, then this pretty much helps. So let's go here. For the answer intent, I'll just provide the answer, and this goes into a resource bundle, so it can be multilingual. So, and this chatbot is a sample I created for the Groundbreaker virtual tour. Okay. And the answer can be quite long, but the rule is not to overdo it because people would have to scroll in the end, and that's what they don't necessarily like with a chatbot. And just leave it with that. So now what I need to do is, how would people ask for an about? They could say help, or I could say, what is this about? Or what can I do with it? Any idea what this is for? What should I do? And even typos wouldn't really matter here, because for as long as you have enough sample data, the system would still understand what you're doing. So now what I need to do is, because I fed the machine learning model, now I need to train the model. And I have two different models here. One is called Train HD, which is great for development because it's very quick in the training. And the one which is very precise takes a little bit longer to train. So that will probably take a couple of seconds or minutes even to train, depending on the number of intents and the number of utterances you have. And the recommendation is to go with, at least I would think, in the beginning with 20 utterances, and then as you go, if you go towards releasing a product, see that you have above 100 utterances that you train the bot with. So I go with trainer HD, and okay, so this now is training, and that's all. And you see I press the button and I'm in machine learning and artificial intelligence, and I don't have a degree in data science. So that's one of the benefits also of Oracle Digital Assistant, that we try to make things easy. We try to abstract any machine learning algorithm or model from the developer, because you focus on what you want to build. I can immediately test it, and I can say, for instance, let's get my interview on. So let's see if it understands it. You see, start interview. And this definitely is not in there because I didn't use, so if I filter start interview, if I go to the filter section and I start for that string, it's not there. And the reason it understands is because it learned from the example sentences. It's like teaching a kid, yeah? So you start teaching the kid a little bit of words, and after a while it starts understanding, even though a sentence might contain a word it never heard before. And then the kid would, of course, ask, what does it mean? And you would teach it. So this is how this works as well. So let's look into entities and how you create entities. As I said, entities are kind of variables. They could follow different patterns, and you see that we have system entities. So we would have the ability to extract an address, and you saw that in my demo where I can extract an address. Currency, we would be able to understand $100 US, 100 euro. Date, duration, email, location, so like the common information. But then there are things that are very specific to your needs, and this is what we call a custom entity. So I want to build one, and again, just my naming convention. I want to build a list entity and call it weekdays. And this is of type value list. You can build custom entities that are on as part, like based on regular expressions. You can build what we call composite bag entities. Composite bag entities are a group of entities that we automatically resolve. Dynamic entities is something that you can call from a script. So if you have like a list of departments or offices and you want to update this for an expense report or for whatever else, then you can call a REST API and you provision the value list from external instead of always going into Oracle Digital Assistant to do that. And then everyone would be able to see the new values. So in my case, it's a value list. So for the value list, I add values. So we know about the weekdays. So I can provide Monday. So if I want that this information also would be resolved if someone types mon, then I put this as a synonym in, and I'll fill this in now. So Tuesday, and if someone wants to put in this, and capitalization really doesn't matter. So Wednesday, just doing this way, and Thursday. Bear with me over there. Just put it lowercase just to be consistent. And 2 more, Saturday. And probably the most beautiful day, Sunday. Okay, so this is my list. All right, so create it. So entities could have a lot of properties that I can set here. I could set, like, if I want to show a list of values, I can set how many days I want to show at a time. I can say, okay, I don't want you to use an exact match, use fuzzy match, which gives me a lot more freedom and wiggle room. But the more precise I want to be, the less I would use that feature here. I have different prompts I can set. So one of the ideas is that you can build a model-driven conversation where everything is configured on the entity and the dialog flow would just print out the bot messages. So that's fine. So I have this. So let me go here and go to entities and now look for my entity. Okay, here's weekdays. And then also, let's, for the sake of it, just use currency. Doesn't really make sense for my use case, but I want to show you how we can extract information. So I go back to try out. And now let's get my interview on Saturday. Let's call it about Saturday. Well, Saturday for $100. Let's assume I get paid for it. And what you see, it recognizes now the intent. Great job. But it also recognizes that I put in Saturday and the currency. Yeah, so if I now change Saturday to Sat, try this again, then you see still it resolves to Saturday. So this is how we train an intelligent model without really needing to know how exactly this algorithm works. And if it's a neural network, it's just a deep learning, I don't care. It just works for me. So let me remove currency because we don't need currency. We can keep weekdays. So I'm not using it for the sample I'm building because I want to step you through all of the possibilities. So for now, let's go back to another round of slides to make it more exciting. So we covered that. So we know what intents are. We know what entities are. Now, there is a visual conversation designer that we provide, and this allows you to quickly build proof of concepts. This is, and you see the screenshots in here. This really allows you, oops, go back. This really allows you to define the intents, and then for the intents, you come out of a workshop, and there's a workshop that is called Conversation Design Experience, where that's probably the first meeting you have with the stakeholders. We discuss, like, what is the problem to solve, what should be the conversation the user has, and this can be modeled in the conversation designer, and this can be modeled to a point where we can then generate it, and based on the information it has, it will be a working prototype. It's nothing that you want to start developing with because it generates stuff, and with all of the generated context, usually they have a naming convention that might not be yours. So for that reason, I wouldn't recommend start development from it, but you have a very quick result and outcome, and you can demonstrate it. And this is part of Digital Assistant, no extra tool required. We can provide structured data input, and this is what we do through web views. Now you can have an Oracle Jet application or an Oracle Visual Builder application, and you launch that from in the context of a conversation. And you do this usually either when users are lost. So within the conversation, the user is absolutely lost, doesn't know what to do. So you can offer the user to show a form. Or if there is like a booking form that has a lot of fields, and instead of asking the user for information for all of the fields, you would just show the form one time and the user would fill in, press submit, and the information would be fed back to the bot. So this is structured data input, very important to have. Human agent integration, I mentioned that. This is where we use Service Cloud. We can also have Oracle Digital Assistant acting as an agent in Service Cloud. There are two different entry points for Service Cloud. One is where the digital assistant called Service Cloud, where Service Cloud more or less is a feature of digital assistant. And then you can turn it around where Service Cloud can configure digital assistant as an agent, which means that we become a feature of Service Cloud. Application initiated conversation. This works today with SMS, with Slack, and with MS Teams. This is where an external application can trigger a conversation. So if you have an application that is a calendar and that sends reminders, and if this reminder includes a conversation, like you're working on a dental department and there's someone who has an appointment, you want to remind the person that there is an appointment scheduled for the next day, then you want them to accept or maybe even ask questions. So you kick off a conversation, and this is what you use application initiated conversations for. Again, remember what I said, machine learning, artificial intelligence is absolutely great and it's needed for a chatbot, but it doesn't make a chatbot. Yeah, so there's a lot more functionality that it's required to create chatbots. And we provide this all out of one platform. So you don't have to find like open source bits and bring them together, train your own models. It's all covered within the platform. The last slide on the features of a skill. So multi-language support. So today we support multiple languages using translation services. Now translation services is what you can use from Google or Microsoft. And there is a feature we're working on, which will be in the upcoming version, where we don't require translation services, where our NLP, or natural language processing, will itself handle multi-languages, though because we need to have then the native support in our machine learning model. For that, we will incrementally increase that. But the number of languages we could support through translation services probably is not what we will be able to beat, but that will give you the ability to create a bot in English and then run it to as many languages as you want. Well, the limit is the number of languages that are supported with translation service. We do have an embedded conversation tester. Now, what I showed you was the intent tester. I will show you later the embedded conversation tester, because when you're in building a chatbot conversation, you want to test it. Lifecycle management, every skill can be versioned. So we do our own versioning where you can say, okay, this skill now should be version 1. This, you saw me providing a version ID. I can clone a skill. So if someone built a skill that I want to use as a base template for my next development, I would clone it. And then we have insights, and I will show you that, which gives me analytic information about how the bot is performing. So let's go back to my skill development. So we're in the weekday interview. So what I want to do quickly is show you insights. So this is Pastor Alfredo with a login, and I also have different versions. So let me move out here, because this is the development bit. So if I click on this icon, sorry, that was the weekday. So this is where I wanted to go. You see I have different versions of my Pasta Alfredo, and this one is the one that I have active. So I can go in here, and here is this little chart icon. I can click on that, and this brings up insights. Now, bot insight gives me statistics about the number of conversations, how many of the conversations are completed, how many conversations are incompleted, how many hit an error, what is the average response time I have. It also shows me if there are any conversations in progress. It gives me an overview of which intents got resolved. So we see like there are a couple of conversations in process here, a few have been completed, and then there were some that are incompleted. So this gives you, like in a word cloud, what is the most resolved intent. Well, we can see it from here as well, but you get the idea. For answer intents, I certainly don't have hits in here, but this is like a way to filter this. If I go up here, I can see the performance based on my intents. So for the order pasta, it's a single pass that most of the people have taken. So I see exactly the road that someone took to order a pasta. I see performance informations. Unresolved is when the bot doesn't understand. So this is not necessarily saying that the bot doesn't understand what you're saying. It just says, I don't have any dialogue for that. Yeah, so as a developer, you may say that if the bot is not confident by at least 80% that a user wants to order pasta, better he would reply as unresolved and then would ask the user to rephrase the question. So looking at path here, so it just has a begin path. So this is like the different paths to, or actually one led to an error message. If I click on get intent, even there was an error. And that's true because I had 2 errors. I can see the path, how many conversations were traveling it. I can look at individual conversations, and this now is kind of looking into the log data. So here's a conversation. I can click on it. I can see what the interaction was. You see these asterisks here. So we have a feature that allows us to mask the logs so that sensitive information like credit card information wouldn't be visible to the administrator. So let's close this. And I can go to this here, which is a retrainer feature. Now, retrainer just shows you what the user provided and how did it get resolved. So here in this case, I have one where someone sends small, which is not mapping to any intent. So unresolved is a correct intent. If that was a different sentence and that was by mistake mapped to unresolved, then I can change it here by selecting a new intent and retraining it. So this is the typical administration view. And in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, you can have different user permissions. There's a permission to do everything, which is like the typical developer permission, but you can also have a business user permission, and then the business user would only have access to these analytics here. So what we want to do is have a look now in the dialog flow. Now the dialog flow is where I craft the conversation. Yeah, as I mentioned, machine learning just resolves what the user wants, but now I have to bring it into a flow. We generate a default flow. So let me go back to my interview because that is what we want to work with. So this is like what we generate by default, and I don't need any of these. So let me bring that to the minimum. So iResult is something I will use because that will give me access to the intent engine, so to natural language processing and to the entity extraction. Name is okay. And here, what I want to have is I want to have a variable which we call weekdays. And the weekdays should be of type list of weekdays, because this now would allow me to create an input component, and this input component would validate against the list of values, which also is important because a bot is, like any other software application that you build, needs to validate user input. And that's what we're doing here. So now let's quickly build something that looks like an interview. So from the templates, I need to take some information. So first of all, I need to understand that what the user wants. For this, there's a system intent component. Drop that in. The next thing I need is I want to be able to prompt for a question. So here we use a common response component. It's just one type of components that we had, but it's very powerful. And in the end, I want to summarize the message. We'll say what the user selected. And for this, let's go here, create a simple output component and add this as well. So I'm more or less constructing my dialog flow, which is a very linear dialog flow here. So I will copy this guy because I need two. So one is what I need for unresolved. My recommendation usually is that all text messages that you send and present to users should come from a resource bundle. And we have an icon here that allows you to configure a resource bundle. so that you can translate it. Because what's very important for bots is that the tone and the wording is correct. And this is what you do through resource bundles. So if I would click on that one here, it allows me to create keys, and then I reference the keys and their associated strings within the dialog flow. So for now, not to be confusing here, let's put that in. I said, sorry, because that is when I don't understand, sorry. I think my wires got crossed. Can you rephrase? And you can do a lot more than just like returning a single message. You can just direct them to a human agent if you want. But for now, so let's do transition. Okay, transition. Next. Not next, because this is the end of the conversation. So let's do a return. And this string is up to you what you put in there. So now we more or less created the outcome for what if the user doesn't provide us any input that we can work with. So here we have the system intent. So I get rid of the properties that we don't need, just to clarify. So I can reach out to different skills directly from here. I don't need that. And translation, I don't need that. And all I need really is like I need variable. And this is what I put to iResult, because this is where the intent engine would save its understanding. And the understanding is what I map here. So I have one regular intent. So I would need to map this. So whenever the system understands it's the start interview, I want it to go to start interview. And otherwise it should go to unresolved. Okay, so this is unresolved. It will just print a message. And now I'm creating a start interview. And for this, I had this thing is, it will just read from my weekdays. So I use this. And I want to have a list of values, and I want to have it to have a variable. So again, I get rid of the properties I don't necessarily want to deal with here. So this I set to iResult, because this would help me if someone says, I want to do my interview and I love Mondays, then it immediately will pick up Monday just from the user sentence. So I leave all of this for what I'm deleting. I leave for tutorials that we have online. Here it checks for the prompt. So I didn't define a prompt on the entity. I could do that, but I can also put the prompt in here and can say, what is your favorite weekday? And then I have a variable to set. So beside of that, here's variable. I just deleted that, because if the user types the answer, I want to capture that. So this would be weekdays. And I have no reason why the text prompt should not be displayed. So let's remove all of the visible parts. This here creates the list of values. And what you can see is that it will look automatically in what is configured as a variable here. And if this is a list value type, it will automatically understand how to show the list of value. The only thing I need to say is that if you click on one of the list items, this is a variable that should get the current value that you're iterating over. So if I have navigation set up or a pagination, then these buttons would make sense. I don't need them. Okay. So the nice thing this tells me is that I did a little typo in here. So I need to have transitions instead of transition. So actions is when the component tells me to do something. So I could say for each of the buttons, I could define an action keyword, and I could say, okay, if you click this button, go there, otherwise go there. I don't have that, so all I do is I have a single transition here, and that would be next. And next I point to print confirmation. So very, very, very short. So let's do this. And you see, I don't need to understand what the payload is that in the end will be sent by the bot. All I need to understand what is the flow I want to do. And then I use components as I would do in any kind of declarative development environment. So the text here is, I would just put in, well, great. So what I want to do is I want to acknowledge what the user said. So the user provides weekdays, so I can use an expression and say weekdays, not value, is a great choice. I personally like Mondays. Mondays feel like a great start. All right, so we have that. So let's quickly validate this. So this needs a transition as well, because this also transitions, ends the conversation for me. Okay, that's fine. And now we are training it again because it has some changes apparently. And now if I click on this icon here, I start the embedded conversation tester. Remember what I said, that we have an intent tester and we have a conversation tester. And this conversation tester allows me to simulate even the look on different messengers. So let's go for the normal Oracle web. And I would say, I like to, oh no, let's try with, what is this about? So someone not knowing. And then it says this chatbot is a sample created for Groundbreaker virtual tour. Perfect, it understands that. And now I say, I want to start my interview. And it shows Monday, Tuesday. And if I now type, let's try, let me type Tuesday, but just do this here. See what happens. It says, well, Tuesday is a great choice. Personally, I like Mondays. So we've written a very simple end-to-end bot that uses machine learning and the dialog flow. Now, let me show you this, because this is what I can build quickly in 5 minutes, but let me show you what I can build if I spend a little bit more on that one. So we can go here. So here I have the messenger, and then I like to start, or I like to provide feedback. So I assume, like, after this course here, you provide feedback, and if that was a chatbot, so just mimicking that. So great, I will ask you some questions. Always give users the options to cancel and interrupt the conversation. It's like a real human conversation where you talk with someone, just have a little bit chit chat, and the person turns around, just goes to the bar, gets a drink. So they could break out of the conversation. So I say, okay, continue. What was the title of the course? It was Digital Assistant Overview. And then this goes through. Who was with the instructor? Frank Nimphius. And that's pretty much like what we did before, except for that this is fully entity driven, which is like an advanced topics. So it took that. So now I say continue, and now it asked about how do you feel this presentation went. It was too fast because Frank always speaks very fast, but the rest is okay. So go here, and I'm just randomly clicking here. Yes, it does. Okay, what are improvements? Frank should slow down. Just provide my feedback. A few questions about myself. And you see, like, how quickly that goes, It's all going online. So first name, well, I can't put Frank in it, just put in Joe. And just abuse the name of one of our product managers, Huang, so Joe Huang, who's a product manager in the US. Email address, Joe at Oracle. And let's say he's private. All right, so very quickly, you get a summary of the answers, and then do you want to submit? And it does that. So this is in big, what I built in small. Yeah, and you can do this for all kind of things. You could have a COVID-19 questionnaire that you want to send out for people who want to report an infection. So very, very sophisticated questionnaires is what you can write very easily using entities and machine learning. So let me move on. So I did a quick check. There's no question from you guys, so that's good. Hopefully that means that you're with me, because now we're going to the next level, and the next level is where we have more than one skill. So I built one skill, and now we want to bring up multiple skill into one conversation as the beginning conversation, where I had a skill with the pasta ordering, with logging, with the check for the balance. And this is what actually Digital Assistant is doing for me. So Digital Assistant is a single front end for multiple skills. Here's the word masterbot. I think master has become an evil word, so I want to replace it right away with concierge, because it's describing the same thing. So it's kind of a front end bot that knows how to dispatch and route to child bots. It uses natural language processing by itself, and the way it does it is really, really smart. So every skill, and you see me creating intents and examples, and those examples are called utterances. So while the skill trains its model based on the utterances per intent, the digital assistant first trains itself on all of the utterances of a skill to figure out which skill becomes a candidate for a specific user message. If a user is in a conversation with a skill, then most likely the user will be routed in the following message to the same skill. But again, users can change their mind. They can, in the middle of a conversation, say, okay, what is my account balance? Or while you're doing an expense report, users might say, what is my manager's phone number? Yeah, I don't know my manager's phone number, but I know where to look it up. So, but in a conversation, if you have an expense reporting skill, it might be that users need to know the manager's phone number. Yeah, so if there is an expense item, they're not quite sure if they can expense, they might want to pick up the phone and just have a call. And you can initiate a call even from a chatbot. So if the chatbot runs in a browser on a mobile phone, or if it runs on an Android or iOS native application, then you can just display a phone number, you click on it, and you have your manager on the line. And then after that, you continue the process. So it uses NLP to identify the skill. Everything is configurable, so it's a mix of machine learning, but also rules that you can define. I can put a specific priority on an existing skill. So if I'm in a current conversation with an expense skill, I could say, okay, if not, the next message has this confidence that I want to change the skill I'm talking to, then keep on going with that skill. We also have the option to disambiguate, and that's really fantastic. And this is, again, compared to humans. If you're in a conversation and someone asks you a question which you would have two answers for, like you're in a party, someone approaches you and says, now, how is your daughter doing? Oh, what if you have two daughters? So you would ask, is it Marie or is it Sarah you're asking for? So you're disambiguating the request. If the person would come and say, how's your daughter Sarah doing? You would directly answer it. And the same for the skill. If you have multiple skills with similar functionality, like you could have an account balance on a banking skill, but you can also have an account balance on a retail skill, which then would maybe be your balance for the voucher that you have. So if someone comes into the bot and says, what's my balance? Then the bot would say, sorry, I have 2 skills that would qualify. And then, because it wouldn't say skill, it would just show you reasonable names. It will ask, like, do you want to know the account balance of your digital bank account, or do you want to know the account balance on the voucher you have with the pet store? And then we have non-sequitur request handling. I mentioned that, which is where we can interrupt the conversation, and it's all handled for you. So let's quickly go through some of the features. You have a skill catalog. This skill catalog allows you to find skills or whole digital assistants. So this is how you get Oracle Fusion Apps skills in. We have different types of invocations, implicit, which is where I just sent the message. But like you all know from Alexa, I could also say, ask digital bank, what is my account balance? Yeah, so I can directly approach it. I just give it a name. I could parameterize skills. So this is when I assemble skills into a digital assistant. I might want to change the number of items being displayed in a list of value, because messengers support different features. On Facebook, you can have a list of value with 4 items. On the web, on Oracle Web SDK, you have 10. Slack supports more than 4. So depending on the channel that you're on, you can detect the channel and then say, okay, if I'm detecting this, pass the number of items to show in a list of value as 4, 10, 8, whatever you want to do with. And this is what you can do to parameterization. And then we have insights on that level as well, and I will show you that in a second. We support versioning as well on Digital Assistant. We have system intents. These are default intents. If someone says, get me out of here, then we exit the skill that we are in. So the user doesn't need to know. The user wants to change topic. So if you train the system exit with, so let's talk about something else. Yeah, so you just train it on that sentence, and then the user doesn't have to say exit. They would just say, oh, you know what, let's change topic. And boom, you're out of the current conversation, and the system is awaiting for the next message. So people would say, you know what, so let's change topics. Now, how is your daughter Sarah doing? Boom, you know, the system would understand it. We have an embedded conversation and routing tester, like the conversation tester I showed you for skills. We have that on the digital assistant level as well. It shows you its routing decision. It helps you to understand why a specific routing thing happened. Now, this is all very good when you test your bots before you roll them out to see under which condition the bot makes which decision to route to a skill. And then you can change it, of course. So before we go there, let's have a look at Digital Assistant. So here I have my Digital Assistant. The Digital Assistant has 3 bots. I mentioned that before. And here is the system intent. So we have exit. So it says abort, bye, cancel, exit, goodbye, I'm done, and some others. Now I can train it. I can now put in and could say, just want to say, let's change topics. Okay, so I put it into the filter box. So let's put it into the right thing. And then I would simply say, okay, learn it. And then it has a train button here as well. I can hit the train button, and then the system now will learn that if someone wants to change topic, and they don't need to use the same sentence, they would then exit the current conversation. Same for help. Now, if I put help, we have a generated card layout, which shows all of the skills we know about. It has resource bundles that I created, like German and the base language strings in. And here is where we have insights on the digital assistant level. Now, on the digital assistant level means like this is now all the traffic that goes through the front bot. So you see there was 1 request for help, 6 in progress, 6 completed, and 2 with errors. I get this as a visual representation here. So let's dual split, just play with that a little bit. I can mark the splitter position. So this would be like where the where I want to see what is really of interest to me. How is the skill performing? So I have two skills called frequently. They're both pretty good. Completion rate, well, finance bot is 100%, which is excellent. Paso Alfredo only has 15%, so something is wrong with that bot. So I would have to check for why that behaves not as I would expect, which basically means going to the skill itself and see what the stats are that I'm getting for the skill. So this really quickly gives me an idea. And then I can go here and configure it. And one of the configuration would be to enable or disable insights, configure translation service, but more important is what I have here. So here I have my configuration settings. I do have routings, conversation parameters, skill mappings. So this is what I can configure. So routing is where I can tell what should be the confidence that you have before you navigate to a candidate skill. Or I can say, if you identified a candidate skill, but someone is in the range of 10%, so like the candidate skill that you want to go to is you're 70% confident, but then there is one that is 60%. If I say, okay, if that is within this margin, then show the user a disambiguation dialog. Better to ask the user what the user really wants than to navigate into something that the user doesn't like to see. Then we do have conversation parameters. Now this is where I use resource bundles as well. These are the default labels that we have on the disambiguation dialogues. We also can control, do we want to be interrupted when a user changes to a different skill? So if a user is like in a financial bot and is doing a transaction, and then the user says, by the way, I like to order a pasta, then we can display a dialog and say, look, are you aware that you're switching context? You're moving out of your financial transactions. Do you want to do that? So explicitly asking, and this is the interrupt dialog that we're showing automatically, but you can configure it. You can say, okay, when it should be shown and how it should be shown. Should it be shown as a dialog where the user can say yes, no, or do you want it just shown as a message, or do you just silently, quietly go over it? And you saw in my sample where I went from the pasta bot into the financial bot, nothing really was shown. So it was just out of one glue because I configured it that way. So this is what conversation parameters are doing. Skill state mappings that allow you to define your custom help, global help skill, and other skills that you want to use instead of the default implementations. And then we have like session expiry, error messages. So everything could be customized here. But most important really is this section of the routing parameters, because this really allows you to fine tune, to define the rules. So that if you see, well, the bot is doing fantastic things most of the time, but sometimes it just doesn't do it the way I want. And then you can start fine tuning it here or just adding more utterances so it learns. And then we have the conversation tester on that level as well. So let's do something very funny. Let's go, and just to show that we can do it. So let's set to SMS. So now I assume the channel is SMS. I like to order pasta. And this now recognizes that SMS is a text channel, and I'm using ton of images in my cart layout. So let's see when it comes back. Let's see. Let me quickly refresh because okay, just want to make sure the development session didn't expire on me. So what you see is that it folds back into the best representation it could create me. Like here I have a bacon pasta, chestnut fusilli, and I would have an option on the component where I can say, don't show this. Yeah, don't show me the URL. Just, show me the important bits. I can tune that. But here I would say, okay, just go for number 2. And then you see, it just steps me through. It's just the same conversation, just for the for a text channel. I can say, okay, just give me this. And then it says, okay. Just, imagine me sitting on my phone, running through this conversation. And again, everything happens the same. So let's say, okay, I want to complete my order, after which it says I need to log in. Okay. I already logged in because I did run it before. Okay, so let's, no, it's the next step. Sorry, I'm mistaken here. So complete my order. It was just showing me the summary and then say, yeah, log me in. And oh, I did say that. Okay, so it continues. So I'm still logged in here because I apparently did run that before going on to this session to make sure that everything was up and running. So you see that when I'm logged in, it actually will not ask me to log in again. So if I change then to, let's simulate Slack. I say I want to order pasta. For MS Teams, there is an option. They have a concept called adaptive cart, which allow you to customize the cart even further. And that is what you can do for a specific channel extension easily. So you see it's a vertical cart layout I'm getting, not a horizontal cart. Reason is that Slack doesn't support horizontal carts, but we immediately fall back. And this is the beauty of our channels that I'm talking next about. We fall back to the next realistic and feasible component. So I have lists of values in here. And the rest is just as you've seen it before. So, and what you see is I have a conversation tab, which shows like the skills I'm going through. And then I have a routing tab, which is not doing anything fancy here, but let's try to force it to do something fancy. So I like to order pasta bacon, make it large, and put oil on it. So this now goes to the routing decision. So it sees it's starting the conversation because I did reset the conversation. And then it shows me all of how it evaluated skills. So it says, this is my candidate skill, which is the pasta skill, and this is the confidence I have. So I can see exactly how my machine learning works in the back. And then it says, okay, I want to have 2 of these, and now complete my order. Okay, and then I do check account balance. So this actually, as I said, goes quietly into saving and checking in credit card selections. But what I want to show you really is that you can see in the conversation tester, there's this little detour that the system does. So it shows me that we're going to a different skill, which is called the financial bot skill. So at any time I know in which skill I am. So this now prints my saving balance and then goes back to exactly where I left it. And then it will continue with the state where actually I moved over to the finance bot, and then I can continue. Now, if I say, okay, complete my order, I'm happy. See what happens when I say log me in. So here you can see I go here to the finance bot and I got back. And then now I say log me in, which is a different type of navigation. And this type of navigation gets indicated in here. Now, so if I provide a name, just to show you how that works, and then do the math and resume to the pasta order, and then you see I have that information. And here, actually, I go from that state, which launches the logging, to the next state. So I'm kind of skipping a state here. And I can see that. I can see the full thing. I can also record test cases. Again, coming back to what I said about that machine learning and artificial intelligence is not all that you need to build a bot. And we provide all of this to you. So everything that you saw here, nothing is what I coded. If I would have shown you the interview skill I just built for you, the weekly or the weekday interview, then it would run on SMS. It would show me exactly this conversation flow. If that was breaking into a separate flow, then I would see it exactly as I see it in here. So very sophisticated what we have. So let's go back to the slides for a few more information. So channels, I mentioned this. Channel types are either native channels that we support, agent integration, or we can integrate application-initiated conversations where a third party could trigger a conversation to happening. We do support third-party channels. So this is Facebook, this is Twilio SMS. It's an older slide, so WeChat is no longer among it because purely I think people just were not using it. We have Slack, we have Microsoft Teams, we have Cortana, and we're increasing native channels as we see them. For all of the channels that we don't have native support for, we would use webhook. And then we have application-initiated conversation support for Twilio SMS and Slack. So there's another typo here. That should be SMS, really. And it's all configuration. That's all, right? And if you want to get your bot exposed on Facebook, then we give you the secret key. We give you the callback for Facebook. When you just go to your Facebook page, get the credentials from Facebook, not your username and password, but the credentials for the Facebook page that the bot should run for, and configure it on our end and give what we provide you to the Facebook side, and then it just works, boom, out of the box. So channels really help you to build one bot that runs on different messengers. You can optimize for a channel because we give you the ability to detect what channel you're on. We also provide zero downtime. That is that if you have a digital assistant or a skill that are exposed on a channel, and now you have a new version, then you can imagine that at the same time you have, say, hundreds of thousands or millions, let's make it very successful, millions of users working with a bot. And now you have a new version. What do? Well, what you do is you just configure the version on the channel, and all users that are currently in a conversation with your bot will continue with the previous version. And every new conversation will actually then start with a new version of the bot. If you want to force people to start with a new version, because maybe your version has a bug that makes things that are very expensive very cheap, you can reset the channel session, in which case everyone would be kicked out of the session, and then we would be forced to start with a new version. So very intelligent that we're providing here. So zero downtime when you have skill or digital assistant updates. Webhooks, as I said, is a standard callback mechanism used in different applications as well. And you can hook it up to anything, to any messenger that we don't have a native support for. So one example is WhatsApp. Pure reason why we don't have native support for WhatsApp is that Facebook just makes it so difficult. Facebook wants you to sign up a form, wants you to have a WhatsApp business account. So it's not enough for them that we just provide a channel. So there's some configuration required, but it's possible, it's doable, and you would do this with webhook. Same for connecting it to Alexa. It's a webhook. And we have examples. There's a blog site called Oracle Tech Exchange where we have samples for all of these. Support for voice, we do have our own voice engine. We provide this currently in the Android SDK, iOS SDK, and the Web SDK. If you click on that, then you just talk what you want to say to the bot, and we will translate it into a text and send the text then to the bot. And over time, we will improve it so that there's no back and forth translation, that we go straight to the channel. So if you want to use Alexa, Google Home, you can do that. You can even also use Twilio Voice API that will allow you to connect like telephony to the bot. So people dialing in and then the bot picks up the phone. Last but not least, extending SaaS skills. Now, when you have SaaS skills, you get them from the bot store. So it's as simple as searching for it. So if you have a license for the SaaS skill, you will see them in your digital assistant pod. And then you just say, okay, in the bot skills store or the digital assistant, you click on it and say pull, and it will pull it down. Now you can keep it as is and use it as is, or you can version it, in which case you can rebase. So that is like you create your own version of the skill. That means you can further develop, you can add intents, entities, you can change the dialog flow, change custom components, change skill settings if you want. And then if there's a new version of that skill released by the Fusion Apps teams, you just rebase your version. But you can also say, you know what, I don't want to rebase, I just want to keep it from there. So you would start with a clone of the Fusion app skills, which basically then means you're on your own, but then you can go in all kinds of directions. You never have to worry about, or you're not limited by functionality that you cannot extend. Yeah. So the two options that you have, cloning or versioning, and if you version, then you can rebase like in a normal source control. So that's the end, but you know, I don't want to stop before showing you something very cool, because we wouldn't be Oracle if we wouldn't eat our own dog food. And we created an internal project and that's called Arti. Now, Arti is a chatbot that helps you, and it's not live yet. It's still in development, will be released very soon. And it's supposed to help you to find the right documentation. And you know that Oracle documentation usually is very good, very extensive, and with a lot of pages. So I could click on Arti, and the first time it will take a little bit because the way that they build Arti is that Arti doesn't wake up immediately. So they give it some think time, and then it will send me a welcome message, and then it takes another think time. But that is just like the way Arti is coded. In reality, I think what you would do is you would code it probably that the message comes straight, as I showed you before. So Arti is ready to help me. I covered a couple of things. So let me ask Arti, what is a skill, just to see if I did a great job. So I have not found any suitable topics, however, may wish to pursue. So it didn't quite get this one. So I could feed back and say, look, you should understand what a skill is because it's an important thing. How to expose the system on channels. So it interpreted it. So let's ask them about, tell me about skill. Let's see if it understands this. So Arti keeps on thinking. So, well, I tell my fellow skills that life is not competition or probably a contest. Okay, so it's excuses more or less that it's not immediately getting it, but that's something I would have to feedback and say like as user. So let me say like, this did not help. Just being a little bit annoyed. So it apologizes. So it asked me for my email address to someone to follow up. So I can now provide my email address and then someone can get in contact with me. At the same time, a message will probably be sent on the engineer Slack channel to know what's happening. So now that Arti and I are good friends, let me ask Arti out for dinner. How about having dinner tonight? This is like off-topic questions, but they're common with human interactions. So Arti says an interesting proposal, but one which I'm unable to fulfill being an artificial life form. So you see, it's kind of pointing me back to what I should do. So let's see if it knows what entities are. What are entities? And here we go. So I'm checking my answer sequence. Entities help provide context to a sentence and that they represent important data that digital assistant must extract. Exactly what I said. So I'm not wrong here for the last almost 90 minutes. And then it tells me that there are different types of entities, built-in entities like currency, date, and custom. I can also say, you know what, I'm not interested to follow along with that, but I say, let's give me a run on what are custom entities. That sounds interesting to me. And it has a link here. So I click the link and it will now point me directly to where in the documentation I can see the full story about entities and custom entities. So you get the idea. So we're using it to just bring a quick intro, a very conversational intro into our own product documentation. As I said, this is going to become a production release. So we will make Arti available. So it's finalizing, it's testing right now. This might not even be the latest instance I'm using here. and then it will become part of the product, so that if you're starting out, if you're, first time you're building it. So let me try something like, is there a way to model a conversation, just to know what the options are? And here we go. Though I have a fondness for code, I recognize that writing it can be taxing and time consuming for humans, even language, blah, blah. Developer digital system must have blah, blah, blah. And then it says, yeah, conversation designer, a visual tool, mentioned that. Oh, give me some more information on this. Oh, there's a tutorial on the conversation designer. So let's click on that one. And here's the outline of what you want to build in a tutorial. And then we go here. And this is like already showing me the dialogues I can create. And boom, this is where I have the conversation outlined, following along in the tutorial, providing more of my conversational tasks. Now I'm scrolling quickly to the bottom. And after that, I can generate things out. You can even have images in it, which is beautiful. And to the very end, it's a long tutorial. I can generate it. And now in the conversation tester, I could run my outline. Beautiful. So I learned quickly about the conversation designer just by asking a question to Artie. So that's what's coming up. And that's really now what's concluding my presentation. And I'm pretty much to the mark where I should be. So we could take questions if there are some. So I don't see questions. If you have questions, just fire them up. Otherwise, as mentioned in the introduction, there's a full 5 days, or is it 10 days? Let's assume 5 days that you have to send questions, and I will check and answer them for you. So that's it. So awaiting questions. Otherwise,
Hi, Frank. How are you?
good.
Yes,
Well, you saw me talking for 90 minutes, so I must be good.
No worries. That's all good. And I cannot see any questions at the moment. I will give you a few more seconds to see if anyone would like to place any questions.
Yep.
But the recording will be available as a playback. They will have the dedicated page that will be available to the people to watch the playback for 2 weeks. And during that time, the people can also interact with you through the posting questions or comments to your playback page. And then you will be notified and you can respond at your convenience.
Cool. Yeah, as I said, so I think it was it 5 days that the questions are open, or is it
20 days.
20 days
2 weeks,
even.
sorry. 2 weeks,
Excellent.
sorry.
Excellent. So people can consider good questions for me.
That's correct. Now, thank you so much, Frank. I cannot see any questions coming. That means thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and doing a fantastic presentation about the digital assistant.
Excellent. Yeah, enjoyed it. So have a good conference.
Thank you so much. And you have a good afternoon over there?
Still in the morning. So I have, let me check, it's 10:30 here in the morning. So it's like the starting of my working day.
Almost 8 o'clock. 8 p.m. almost here.
Yeah, I saw that, and I'm grateful that I didn't have to get up in the middle of the night. That instead you moved my presentation to the end. So that's good.
No, all good. All right. Thank you so much, Frank.
Okay, bye.
Have a wonderful day.